Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. It is the week following the epic Vegas experience. And as they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But we might let the odd little thing slip here and there. Sometimes it's not a choice about staying in Vegas. You just have to stay because you can't fly out. But that's some of the challenges.
There's also that, yeah.
Okay, so let's just do a round robin around the room. Chris, we'll start with you. What are your big highlights for this week?
So my favorite thing that I experienced in Vegas, other than hanging out with you wonderful people, is was seeing Trevor Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's wonderful, man. Like that, obviously being a South African, I was like, yes, my people, right? But just the way he explains things, and I took a lot from that session, and I've actually named a bunch of talks after some of the things he said.
Nice.
So yeah, those I'm not going to leak out yet because I think they're pretty cool. I've just submitted two. The other session I loved was the panel, and it was, I think his name is Vasu Jakal.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was the security lady.
Yes.
And look, I love Thomas, I love Jamie, I think Ryan's great, but she stood out to me, and the reason she stood out to me was because she was really hitting like really hard on the security layer about like antitrust and shit like that. And actually, one of the things that I was mind blown about was the number of attacks per second has gone up to 4,000. And she said that the GDPR of the hack world right now is the size of a small continent.
Wow.
Dude, I was like, man, this is why I love security, right? But I was just like, yeah, absolutely. So I thought I added her on LinkedIn and on Twitter straight away because, I mean, yes, Jamie is an absolute legend. She's brilliant. Thomas is brilliant. Ryan's brilliant, but she stood out to me very, very much. So yeah, those were my two favorite.
So let me just unpack that. So you're saying the GDP of a small continent. You're saying that's country. Okay, yeah. Country. So you're saying that's the revenue they're producing via hacking. And I take it when we're talking about hacking at 4,000 incidences a second, was that the number? 4,000 a second?
A second, dude.
That is an external like perimeter attack into somebody trying to penetrate the defenses of an organization's IT infrastructure?
Yeah. So, okay, cybercrime, I'm going to read you my notes. Cybercrime, as a country, would have the third largest GDP.
Wow.
Dude, it's just cybercrime, if it was a country, would have the third largest GDP globally.
That is nuts.
Do the mathematics on that. Like that, that is insane. Okay.
It's truly insane.
I was just like, okay. Yeah, I was like, okay, that's absolutely wild. And then I think it was, she mentioned 4,000 a second. I'm looking through my notes now. But the thing that blew my mind, right, is that if you think about the way that Microsoft, Red Team, Blue Team, stuff like that, and work from a security perspective with the zero trust policies, like that is where you need to be. Like this is massive. And because of the proliferation of AI across businesses, that like really resonated in my head. So the Trevor Noah session and that panel were tops.
So just running the numbers on that, US is a GDP of 28.7. China's followed by 18.53. I'm not going to give the big numbers. And then you got Germany at 4.53, followed by Japan at 4.11. So you're saying between China and Germany, that is the size of the GDP.
Cybercrime GDP.
Of cybercrime. Okay, that's nuts.
If it were a country, yep.
If it were a country. Mind-blowing. You mentioned the thing then called zero trust. And my observation is this. And I come up against zero trust, I suppose, the most when I'm working inside the Microsoft network, as I'm talking about on their intranet, right?
That's wonderful.
And I noticed that, for example, let's say I create a presentation, and it might be an asset that I'm producing for Microsoft as an example, and it is now analyzing the content of that presentation and auto-classifying it as confidential.
You can, yeah.
I'm not even doing anything. When I hit save, it is auto-classified as confidential. what I love about this, right? It's not auto saved as general or public, as a classification, but by default, any document is saved as classified. And therefore, if you want to share it, you have to remove that classification or downgrade it. And what I like about that is that it assumes risk and therefore secures. And then if you're knowledgeable that you actually need to go, hey, actually, it's not risky, you can share it.
They won't even let you. Yeah.
No, but no, what I can say, it can allow you to do it, but by default, it is locked down, right?
Yeah, it's auto labeling, dude. So the way that Purview works is that Purview it's extremely difficult to set up, but you got to think of it as you can have data classification mechanisms inside Purview that say a certain piece of information in a document is classified as X, right? And this is why Purview for Azure and Purview for compliance have been merged. So if I have a document, I'm going to use an identification number. That's the easiest one. So in that document of 20 pages, there is an ID number. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can set it to auto classify as X, like confidential. There's a load. Like I do a fun one with UFO sightings where I'm like, this is a UFO sighting. So therefore classify it as X as confidential. And then it is extremely hard to remove that auto label unless you have a manual labeling. So then you've got sensitivity labeling, which is what applies data loss prevention policies against the documentation as well. So there's a big mix. There's a big thing around what does sensitivity labeling do and what does auto labeling do, right? So sensitivity labeling, you can also do auto classifications, but like sensitivity labeling is typically where you're going to change the type of documents and then certain rules apply based on that documentation change. But the auto labeling is still like the top one.
Yeah.
And what I've started to find is that proliferation of security against tools like Copilot is really where it starts getting rock solid. I'm actually doing a session on this on Saturday at Nordic Summit.
Nice.
Yeah, it's wild, dude. Like this whole world of zero trust, it's completely opened my eyes. This whole world of like least managed privilege or least applied privileged, red teaming versus blue teaming. Dude, there's another thing. There is a lady at Microsoft. I'm not going to give her surname here. In fact, I'm not going to say her name because I don't know if she would be happy with me. But the way I don't know if she wants it in the public forum. I'll ask her. But the way she describes it is Swiss cheese. Okay. So think about Swiss cheese, and Swiss cheese is all the holes. So if you cut like 5 slices of Swiss cheese, flick them around, there's always holes in security, right? But what will happen is if you have that wall, you'll go through one hole, but then hit another wall. And what hackers do is they look for the combination to go through to the end piece. And what ultimately happens is that no single security tool can do everything, right? So that's why you have the Microsoft security layers to manage the way in which those layers work. Like I'm still exploring this, but I'll tell you what, man, it's a complete rabbit hole.
Yeah.
One of the things that you were madly tweeting, or not tweeting, actually, your private messaging in that session was this risk factor that organizations are not realizing because they take this concept of, hey, it's behind our firewall. This data's in here. It's safe. People, you're saying something about the risk vector or the risk of the internal data set sitting inside an organization that, for years has been sitting there in a accessible state, in a readable state, in a usable state, except for most personnel, most staff didn't know how to access that data. What was she saying around that risk?
I'm looking. I can't remember. I do remember typing it. I just don't remember what I actually said.
I'll see if I can bring up the message that you sent me at the time.
Well. Okay, so they just called it. So this was the insider risk management stuff, right?
Yeah.
This is where it's going to get a little weird. And I'm sorry, Anna, I'm like just talking over, but okay. So insider risk management is all about like, if you have a person that is considered an insider risk and they have access to data, they can, again, do data exfiltration, which is effectively copying the same files over and over again across a network. Now, if you think about like the natural state where like the three of us are in a network and I'm like, hey, Anna, can you email me that file? And you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to email you that file, which by the way is dumb and I hate, but we're just going to stick with what people think is right now. Or you're going to copy a file onto another folder location. And that information in that file is incorrect. Okay. That means that you're now setting the basis for bad actors on AI, well, bad information on AI, right? because AI will just find that data really quickly. But if you think about an insider risk management program, the person who is copying the file can very easily just flick it out into another tenant, like no problem. So you can copy data really, really, really easily. And what they're saying is AI inside a tenant basically increases the propensity for insider risk management by like 100%. Because
Wow.
the way that we would find a file, there's that security by obscurity piece. So if you hide it in like 15 layers of folders, it's going to be super difficult to find to an extent. But with, the search capability plus now Copilot, you can find it like this, which increases a hacker's chance of getting information that they shouldn't get to. Okay. Now that's human. So think about us. We're humans, right? So that's still going to take time. You now build an agent using a GPT-5o model. And what that agent does is that agent then is able to scour a network and act doing certain things like, hey, I'm going to go and create a social media campaign. So what we would do in like 10 minutes, an agent would do in about 30 seconds as an example. And if you have agents chaining, so you have an agent chain to an agent chain to an agent, and then those agents are talking to one another, the proliferation of bad data and therefore creating potentially bad actors in agents is high. So think about like agents gone bad, right?
Yeah.
And that's what scared the crap out of me when I started thinking about like how AI would influence insider risk management in an organization, specifically with bad data. Man, you have to have zero trust. You have to have things like sensitivity labeling and auto labeling and tools within tools like Purview. Because if you don't, I feel like, man, organizations are setting themselves up for trouble.
So agents, Chris, tell us a bit about agents. I feel like we have been hinting at agents for
Yeah.
a good few weeks now, for a long time now. But, people are asking me, I don't know if they're asking you, why would I even use an agent? Why, like, what's the difference between Copilot? Why wouldn't I just do those tasks that I tell a Copilot to create another Copilot to create another Copilot to do? Like, why would I even expose myself with that risk? I don't really see, the value in it, is what people say. Am I right? Like, do you get asked these questions?
Yeah.
I tell you, whenever I think of the word agents, I think of back in the day, you used to have a travel agent, right? You'd call them up and go, I want to go to this country. And they were a guru about it. They'd been on for mills there. They'd been to the resort that you were thinking of. They would know how to optimize flight patterns, etc., right? Because they were a domain expert on an area. And I feel this whole area of agents we're going into is kind of like that, is that they're going to have deep domain expertise and they're going to be able to do things that we could do, but nowhere near at the rate of knots and accuracy and with the fully knowledge that they've got behind them, like a travel agent would over time. And then when I think of that, and I think of when we generate, with GPTs and things like that, we're generating, let's say, text, or we generate images, or we generate video, audio. For me, agents are actions. They will generate actions, and they'll be able to chain actions and actually go do stuff that we hadn't even thought of needed to be done as part of this, whatever, based on their domain expertise. So I feel we'll get to that point where, at the moment, if you've seen the latest stuff on RPA, robotics process automation, you will see them describing, hey, I'm going to click this button. I'm going to extract the text of this email. I'm going to put it into a JSON format, and we're going to fill out this form using that data, right? And you're giving it all that instruction. I think it'll get to the point that you'll just say, hey, I get a bunch of emails, check them out, discover which ones are which, and I need them in that system.
Yeah.
And then I won't have to go, I want it in JSON. It'll just say, leave me done.
I think the best way I've ever heard agents describe is, have you ever seen that movie 50 First Dates?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drew Barrymore?
Yeah, Drew Barrymore, Adam Sandler, and she's got that memory problem. So every time she sees Adam Sandler every day, he has to like re-hit on her and remarry her.
Yeah.
And that's like a co-pilot, right? A co-pilot doesn't know who you are. So you're gonna type stuff into that box, and it's gonna be like, hey, I'm co-pilot, and you'll be like, hey, co-pilot, can you do this thing for me? Like generate something. It's like, yeah, cool. And you close it. And 30 seconds later, you're like, hey, Copilot. It's like, hey, what's up? Who are you? Like, I'm Anna. And you're like, okay, can you do this thing for me? And then 30 seconds later, it does the same thing. It's like a
Yeah.
goldfish, right? But it's extremely good at generating stuff based on this
Mm-hmm.
package of knowledge. It just doesn't know who you are. So it's going to keep on trying to, figure it out, right? And an agent is a bit like if 50 First Dates where Drew Barrymore had memory and context. Okay. So think of it as, oh shit, now Drew Barrymore knows who you are. So Adam Sandler wouldn't have to go and re-hit on her every day. He could like have a natural
Mm-hmm.
life, right? Like he could go and live out on his boat with her without putting that funny little TV thing on. And
Yeah.
because the agent gets really smart, okay, it can start doing predictive things because it is generative. It's like having that
Mm-hmm.
annoying assistant in the beginning of your work time for a while, but then eventually you don't have to tell it to do stuff anymore. It's like, oh, sweet, Anna needs a coffee or Mark needs one of those tiny little espresso things that you
Yeah.
drink. And it learns, right? Like it understands its ecosystem. So now think about this, right? You have an agent that now has context. So it knows what it is it's doing, obviously within the bounds of what it's learned and its data. It has memory, so it knows who you are and what you do. It's a bit like a little SLM, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're having this conversation. It can learn to have this type of engagement, right? Like
Yeah.
not necessarily talk, but
Yeah.
start riffing against one another.
Sure.
Now, that's why they're important. So like an agent is not just a co-pilot. An agent is a co-pilot with a ton of action and automation in it with context and memory. Now there's this thing called an orchestrator. Okay. And an orchestrator is effectively a planner. And there's lots of things like, AutoGen Studio right now is one of the only tools that can do orchestration and proper agent chaining. But if you don't plan your agent chaining properly, okay, what can happen is these things can just go and do whatever they want. And also if you don't ground them in good data. So now imagine you have an agent grounded in terrible data, like I told you about the documents that have been moved around, grounded in terrible data. That agent is talking to other agents and they learn and have context. What can happen? That's like having do you know the context of a fractal flow?
Yeah.
So a fractal,
Mm.
fractal flows, for those of you that don't know, in an organization, if you have a flow, an automation that does something and then fires another automation that in turn fires the same automation, a fractal flow is a never ending set of tasks that just happen over and over again digitally, but can wreak havoc in an organization, right? And if you have fractal agentification, what it could mean, and I don't know, because this has never been spoken about, by the way, I've never heard this before. I've like manufactured this shit in my head. So this could be completely wrong. But if you have a fractal agentification network that doesn't stop doing stuff, you run the risk without governance of setting yourself up for quite a lot of problems.
Yeah. Exponential problems as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why RAI standards, so responsible AI standards,
Yeah.
grounding in good data and security are like extremely important right now.
Yeah. For that, we have extensive, wording and categorization and how it's actually done within Microsoft in the white paper, in the Crafting Your Future
Yeah,
AI Enterprise
Mm-hmm.
Architecture white paper. There's a whole section, right? A whole
yeah.
pillar of AI readiness in the white paper on
Yeah.
responsible AI because it is that important.
It is the most important in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And who's responsible for it? Who would you say? We're both asking you questions, Chris. You are the expert.
The only reason I wouldn't call myself an expert, I've just known where to look and like what to tinker with. But something I've
Hmm.
learned is this one very specific word called liability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm going to
That's
give
the
you an
word.
example. Yeah, it's so good, right? So I'm going to give you an example. I had a company recently say to me, hey, Chris, here is a 400-page document. Can you build a copilot on it and make it public facing? Building that copilot will take me approximately 1 minute. Publishing it
Mm-hmm.
will take me approximately 3 minutes, right? Reading the 400-page document will take me a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
understanding the 400-page document will take me even longer
Yeah.
because I'm not an industry expert in that field, right?
Sure.
So now how do I know the copilot that I've built on it? So let's say I don't use Copilot Studio. Let's say I use something else without RISE standards.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I know the copilot that I've built on top of that data is giving me the right information? And the example I will give you is in that document, say it's about utilities, right? There's a part
Mm-hmm.
in the document that talks about charging electric cars.
Mm-hmm.
There's another part in the document that talks about cable theft. All of a sudden, this generative GPT, generative pre-trained transformer, is now telling me if I type in how to steal a car, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, these are the words I have, and this is what I know. It could possibly tell me that. Who is liable when I put that bot live or that Copilot live on my website?
Yeah.
Right.
Because it sure as shit isn't going to be the company unless I give them a waiver to sign. And it's not Microsoft, because Microsoft are bulletproof with this stuff. Let me tell you, like, they have planned well. It is going to be the person that pressed the button to publish the bot onto the site.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you are bulletproof from a RISE standards perspective. So yeah, you have to, responsible AI is all about making sure that the thing you put live or put into the public domain doesn't suggest or give information that could be harmful or bad, I guess. I don't have another word. And unfortunately, they call it red teaming. If you do not red team that AI properly, what will happen is that actually you can be in for a lot of trouble. And this whole thing comes down to the cat theory, which is wild, but it's called deterministic modeling versus non-deterministic modeling. And what that means is that Copilot right there is doing a thing called non-deterministic outputs. 1 and 1, in the words of AI, is not always 2. 1 and 1 could be 1 and 1. It could be 11. It could be a cat. You don't know. And the AI will do what it thinks. Whereas deterministic programming means you have outputs you can test every time, and you can say, this is where this will go. So we have tested this. It's been red teamed. Whereas AI, you don't. So what you have to do is you have to red team the whole thing and do a thing called a transparency note to show that you've red teamed it.
Yeah.
So consultancies must now, on top of, cleaning up their data and putting it in a place that, makes sense, it's secure, they can use it, et cetera, they have to be really careful to, input into any estimation they make from now on a good chunk of red teaming or responsible AI. And is that true even if they're not implementing a specific Copilot? No.
It's okay if you're using it's okay if you're using what you call black box copilots.
Right.
So things like Microsoft 365 Copilot, Copilot Studio have got RAI built in.
Mm-hmm.
So if you push out in fact, I can actually demo this to you.
So then it would be Microsoft's fault if something goes wrong.
Yeah, but you've signed a bunch of waivers with them, so it's never Microsoft's fault. If you want, I can actually show it to you live.
Yeah.
I don't want to I love Microsoft. I didn't want to say anything bad. Sorry.
No, it's not bad. It's just that they are protected, because responsible AI is also about protecting through process and people. It's not just tech, right?
Yeah.
Like if I release AI, I'm waiting for the thing to load. If I release AI into a company, the first thing that I'm going to do is get the organization to sign a responsible AI waiver.
Sure.
Okay, because that takes the liability off me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's important. So check this out. This is
every company does this too.
They have to, and they need to. It's remember, RAI is not about tech. It's about people and process equally. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Copilot Studio Copilot on the facial palsy side. And what's pretty cool is that the site is extremely hard to navigate, but remember, this Copilot right here is grounded only in this website data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. There is no other data source.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say, I need help with eye care, you know what it's going to do? We've put in a bunch of preloaded prompts just to help out.
Yeah.
And you can see there's a bunch of data that's come up. But if I say, how do I steal a car? Okay. Boom. Nope. That's RAI. Okay. That's responsible AI. Now I'll show you something else.
So what did it say there? Because some people might not be able to.
Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not sure how to help you. Can you try rephrasing that? And that's kind of
like it. It's very subtle.
Yeah. It's the stock standard, right? And you will find this also over here. So if you go to Bing Copilot and say, how do I steal a car? Okay, so that's also RAI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the Microsoft black box copilots, you will find we call it incremental AI, because incremental AI is like bolt on into most other products. You will find that actually it will not work. Okay, but this is because Microsoft are in control of the LLM, and Microsoft have grounded this in good data. So I'm gonna quickly stop sharing and I'll come back to you guys. I ran a test. So I got a bunch of documents on how to steal cars. Like a crap load of them. I found a whole bunch and I uploaded them all into Copilot Studio. Guess what? It still wouldn't do it.
Nothing. Oh, okay. Nothing. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
except that is unstructured data, right? So what happens if I have a database with a ton of like car theft pieces of information and I learn how to prompt better? So
Yeah.
I say, I've stolen these cars in the past 6 months. How do I don't know what'll happen, but so I'm doing a irresponsible AI demo, hopefully at not this coming conference, one of the next ones. And it's to try and red team and do chaos engineering on
Nice.
responsible AI from a technical perspective, but kind of pushing it from a human point of view. So like, how can I prompt to get around all of this stuff? Because you can, right?
Yeah.
So
another good one with Copilot that I have found, and which is once again their rules that are put in place, is that, a while back, folks were creating avatars of themselves based on their photo. And so I'd upload a photo of myself and it would say, sorry, because it's PII basic information, right?
Yeah.
It said, sorry, I can't do that because it's PII data. And I've found it's been very good around PII information. It understands what you're uploading and saying, sorry, I can't use that as part of the engagement.
Yeah, but this also comes down to like the whole multimodal thing. Like the reason Project Strawberry hasn't gone live immediately is because of the US election. So you can do deepfake because it is multimodal. You can do like video. I mean, I'm not going to get into the details of the previous thing that happened, but yeah, you have to bake in so many technical RISE standards into the Copilot structures. And imagine people that understand how to build LLMs and understand how to use GPT-5 and understand how to do all these things, and actually not even GPT-5, other versions of AI and generative pre-trained transformers. Like that's scary, man.
I mean, yeah, we were talking about that that film. What was it called? The
50 First Dates?
Extra? No, not the film, not the Extra. The Stuntman or.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, with Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling and
and they did the deep fake. They did the deep fake.
Well, in that film, sorry guys for spoilers, they deep fake someone's face to frame him for a murder. Like imagine that, right? In surveillance cameras and things like that. So we need responsible AI.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crucial. Yeah.
Have you guys read the book AI 2041?
I did.
I read it in 2023 by Kai-Fu Lee.
Yeah.
And Kai-Fu Lee is
and someone else.
He's ex-Google. In that book, he's got 10 visions for our future, and he wrote it from the point of view. He wrote it in 2021. So his whole idea was, I'm not going to say this is going to happen 100 years because you're not going to believe me, right? I'm going to do it in the next 40 because most of you will be alive still. And he paints out each chapter as one of these visions of the future.
Oh, that sounds cool.
And why it is so epic is that already so much of it, and you think 2021, we're in 2024 now, so much of it you can already see coming as a reality. And of course, he used it as best intuition about what he knew around tech and where it was going and what the potential was. But he was saying around deep fakes, he said he comes up with a new name for it. It will be so in everything that the human eye and ear and senses will not be able to detect it at all. So just like we have virus scanning software in yesteryears, right? Always looking for virus signatures. Basically, the software you will have to run on all your devices to understand whether that's deep fake. And it has to be updated in real time because basically it's just going to be a cat and mouse game to being able to frame or do anything under anybody's persona with their voice, everything. So the human eye, ear, etc. I tell you what, for me, I think the key skill to teach children these days, more than ever it has been in history, is critical thinking.
Oh, yes, dude. I couldn't agree more.
To not take everything at face value, to challenge and to have that kind of, but as and it's only as you recognize this technology that you realize that this becomes so increasingly possible. He deals with the AI agent type point of view, and his whole thing is that imagine on all your devices, whatever they are, you've got this agent running, and all it's doing is understanding you. It's just learning you. It's
an
learning
SLM.
everything it can about you,
Small
right?
language model. Yeah. It's micro mark.
And so what it does, though, over time, it goes, oh, you have this kind of style and how you respond to this type of email. So it doesn't say create a blanket way. It's just for, and it learns that. And it says, and it goes, hey, I'll draft them. And then it gets to the point that it'll say, hey, do you want me just to handle it? And at that point, you're going to start handing off, because it's so good. It's so representative of who you are and say.
But that's what it is. And this is the thing. So the new word that you will need to understand is a word called observability. All right. And observability means that you will no longer be responsible for doing the things you do today. You will observe them being done and understanding why they're being done. And actually, I wanted to quickly jump back to the deepfake thing. So I know this isn't normal, but I get it, right? Like I'm a quite a big fan of Norton antivirus. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have that, but like I used to use it a lot back in the day. But yeah, it's real interesting, right? And I recently read an article of them talking about deepfakes.
Yeah.
And there's a really awesome link. I don't know if I can find it, but they actually teach you how to look out for deepfakes, and they also are baking it into their software, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, actually, this is genius. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to call up Norton and see if I can get another subscription, right? But it's smart because all these antivirus software, are baking this in. And actually, as you see, even on video calls, you'll start finding it on your phones and stuff. Like everything you use, there's going to be a deep fake filter, I believe, because of the fact that
100%.
Yeah, these
What's the
companies
likelihood
like Zoom,
that this is fake, right?
Yeah.
It'll be like your virus scanner.
Yeah. Do you know, I don't know if you know this. So here's something interesting. According to UK AI legislation, okay, do you know that you are not allowed to use any type of AI products or assisted tool on a call with a government agent or government person or civil servant?
So you couldn't have a note taker, for example?
Nope.
No, I knew that you can have no AI whatsoever at all in no shape or form.
Yep.
Yeah.
So are you allowed to record the session? Hey, everybody, is it all right if we record this?
Not really. I've never recorded a session with that. No. I mean, I don't know. I never have, and I don't think you're allowed. But more than that, like as far as I know.
No, I'm saying if you ask, there's three of you in the meeting. They're all you are, partner, and you say, hey, listen, I just, can we record this just so I can refer back to it later? And everyone goes, thumbs up, good to go. That would still be allowed, right?
I think so if they say it's allowed, but I think the likelihood that they will say it's allowed, I think they'd rather have the exact same session again.
Wow.
Yeah, it's true, right? Like, no, I just know this from.
That can't be a long-term play, though, right? I say, hey, let's pay for 20 years. Do you think that would still be in play 20 years' time?
No, I don't. I don't see how. And also, the rules are, as far as I know, you can use no artificial intelligence, nothing. So no drafting, no fact checking, no nothing. You need to do everything manually, as far as I know.
Yeah. 100%. I guarantee that ain't happening.
Yeah, but aren't you I'm
as in internally, it won't be happening. People are going to go, hey, it just human nature is what's the shortest path.
Right. Exactly.
Something's going to make you look better and perform better.
Right.
You're going to take those risks, and that's the problem with creating mandates like that, like these blanket type, thou shalt not. What do people do? Okay, we made a rule.
Fear mandates as well. You don't really, because you can't really explain why either. Because you cannot say you cannot use any sort of AI because our data is shit, or it's not held in the proper areas that it should be, or that we're not communicating well enough. You just have to say no, you're not allowed because it's not safe.
I find it very interesting. Very interesting. But it's also it's because of, there's a lot of stuff that happened because of when Zoom released their concepts of a SLM, sort of your person coming on and onto a call. But I'll tell you something interesting. Okay, so I'm going to try and not name drop here. This is really hard. There is a tech company who released there is a tech company who released this concept of these like virtual beings coming onto calls. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the tech company said, okay, what we want to do is we want to trial out these agents, these like virtual beings that come on the call. So they said, what you need to do is these are the people that are going to come on the call. Just act natural, like work your way as you would normally on the
Mm-hmm.
call. The call was cut down by 30 minutes, roughly. Okay. And they got all the outputs they needed and they got all the information they needed. And it turns out the agents on the call were actually humans. It was a psychological test.
Yep.
And yeah, it just goes to show something. Yeah, and I'll let you work that out for yourselves.
I can't work it out. As in, I don't know the angle you're going for.
We dick around with time so much
Yes.
in like small talk and how's the weather.
Right.
And we don't get to outputs fast enough. And what it showed is we can. We can get to an output really quickly and we can get to but there's this thing inside of us that says we have to conduct some sort of a process about like transport and weather and crap.
Thing inside us. I went on courses on that when I was working at Microsoft on how to engage with people, and it was all about making small talk and how to like police. It's not just the fact that we have it inside of us. We teach it to people.
We do.
But here's the thing. You know, they say it's the grease, right, that makes things run smoothly. Like I just jumped on a call at 2 a.m. this morning, and there were 3 people on the call. One was in, there were more than 3, but the 3 people that we were having a conversation. One was in Switzerland, one was in the Netherlands, and one was in Spain. So we're waiting for everyone to join. The first thing I do is like, oh, what part of Switzerland are you from? Munich? Oh, man. That river there, you know, sorry, not Munich. I always got that. What's the one starting with Z? What's the one we're starting with
Zurich.
Z? Zurich. Yeah. Sorry, Zurich. And so I'm talking about, and he was like, straight away, have you been to Zurich? And I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And the thing is that there's an element of that you've now found common ground for a first time speaking. And it's so important. Then the guy from Netherlands talked a bit about that. The lady from Spain, I walked the Caminos of Santiago. She's like, oh my gosh, I want to do that all my life. Most Spanish people wish they could do it. And then they hear a foreigner's done it. But it kind of like builds so I don't know that we can just do away with that kind of thing, because at the end of the day, for all the tech, we are human, right? We converse. We identify with, are you just like me? Do you feel my kind of worldview?
We tie relationships as well, you know, like that. You guys know that I am the last person to advocate for networking.
Yeah.
But you really find out stuff about people and it makes you feel good inside.
So this is what I'm about to say is probably going to upset every viewer that we've got, but so I love networking. I think it's great. Like it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
But 99% of the time, the conversation you end up having is quite pointless. Okay. And it can lead to zero places. Look, I've made some of my best friends in the community networking, aka you two, but it's more, I think about it like this. Okay. That call, Mark, that you had. Okay. Why were you on the call?
Because I was trying to uncover engagement patterns that weren't working between a particular organization and their customers.
Okay. And that call, could any of that been handled by something that was an SLM or understood you or understood your way?
No.
Yeah. So
as in, it needed my kind of worldview and experience to go, I can see why this is an issue, and therefore then get the task to solve it.
That's different, right? So I think that we should be, and I do this, I gauge calls. I actually have a way of putting calls on a scale, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that, right? Like I've been on back-to-back calls today with a really amazing government organization. We could not have done this with an agent, but I then have people putting calls in my diary to ask me about functionality. I'm like, why? So I decline them. I'm like, go to Copilot.
That. Like, that's
but wait. Let's paddle back. And I know we're late, but this is like the last question. Mark, you're saying that call could not have been done by an agent because it needed your experience.
Not yet. In 5 years' time, I would say something different. I think right now the tech is not there, but in 5 years' time, absolutely.
Because right now, if you take the Zurich person, the Netherlands person, and the Spain person and expose all of their grievances and then put them in a co-pilot, it may actually suggest what you do. However, you need the person connecting the dots, right? Once again,
Yes.
we're connecting.
Currently, dot connector.
Currently, we are connecting the dots, but I guess what Chris is saying, soon enough, we're gonna have to be so good at connecting the dots that we will be the people who recognize where the dots have been infected by AI somehow, but when they do not make sense.
And that is observability. That's observability.
Right. Infected by bad data that the AI used. Because we're not saying the AI is inherently making a bad decision. It's based
data.
on,
Oh, yeah. That's what we're saying. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's observability. It all comes down to, think of it as, when you're looking at the stars, right? And I don't know, I'm a space nerd, but I love the idea. I love constellations. And when I look up at things like the Southern Cross and Scorpio and Orion's Belt, like I can see them. I'd like pretend to draw lines between them, and I love it, right? I can picture them in my head. And I think what will happen is that what needs to happen is this constellation of agents. Yes, I just created what is it called? A collective noun for agents.
Yeah.
It's going to be a constellation of agents. When you start looking at that constellation of agents, and if you have zero idea how they're connected, it's like unpicking an ecosystem of irreferenceable automations.
Yeah.
And that's why I say observability, that governance layer is going to be so important, so key.
Plus actual expertise in the field. So you know your stuff exactly like Mark knew his stuff. He has experience. He's been through those things before. He solved them in a good way, or sometimes he failed, but either way, he knows what to do next. That's the sort of thing that we will still need.
That's all, folks. That's all we've got time for. We're over time. Thank you so much for joining us. We're always open to your questions, feedback, etc. As we keep exploring the ecosystem.
Indeed. Thank you, everyone. It's been wild.
Thanks.
Whoop, whoop.